Welcome back, everybody, into Bill's Chat, Quick Chat. I am Josh McCarty. Back with me, a familiar face, Stokes. Stokes, how you doing today?
Doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. The Bills have a big tilt coming up this weekend with the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday Night Football, and Stokes and I are here to give our predictions on the game. Now, Stokes, the Bills are off to an amazing start. 3-0. The last two games have been blowouts. And the Ravens have been a little bit different. They started off 0-2. They lost that heartbreaker to Kansas City, which you can kind of live with opening night in Arrowhead. But it was really that week 2 loss at home to the Raiders that had everybody shook. And then last week they got right against the Cowboys, really got up on them big 28-6 before Dallas mounted a fourth quarter comeback that was really aided by recovering an onside kick and some fluke. Where are you at with this Ravens team, Stokes? Do you still view them in that same upper echelon teams in the AFC that I think we would both would put Buffalo and Kansas City in?
Absolutely. I think that when you have a quarterback as dynamic and as crucial as Lamar Jackson is, and when you have a player like Derrick Henry who is a certifiable game changer in many different respects, that's a team that you always have to consider is going to be at the end of the season, and their defense always is among those that you have to have to game plan for in many ways. No matter whether they have elite talent or not, they always play pretty well. And when you have obviously the game breaker like Lamar Jackson is, like, aside from playoff time, like in regular season, he's always one of those guys that you can't really game plan very well for, and he's a guy that's always going to make games exciting.
You know, you mentioned that defense, and if you're a certain age like you and I are, you just grew up expecting the Ravens to have great defense. I mean, the Ray Lewis defense was, in my opinion, the best defense in the history of the league in 2000 and just 2000. The one with Saragusa, Sam Adams, McAllister, and those guys. But then after that, they even added names like Ed Reed, Terrell Suggs, Haloti Ngata, and the list just kept growing. So we just grew up in this era expecting the Ravens defense to be good. You mentioned the names. There are still a lot of names on this defense, but at least in the short sample size of 3 weeks, they are really struggling to defend the pass. And that's kind of interesting, Stokes, because when you look at some of the names in this secondary, Marlon Humphrey, former first round pick, Kyle Hamilton, last year considered one of the best safeties in the sport, off to a really, really rough start. I saw opposing quarterbacks are at a quarterback rating of 123.6 when targeting him. Marcus Williams off to a really rough start. And some of that could be explained by the fact that they are not getting pressure on the quarterback at all. Even when they blitz, they aren't getting pressure. When you see this defense, you see them struggling, you see the names I talked about. Are you thinking that it's going to be one of those the cream eventually rises to the top situations, or is there real concern that maybe some of these names that we've become accustomed to being very good might just be aging out?
I would say probably more the former than the latter. Like when you have last week's situation where Dallas, they basically just threw the ball the entirety of the second half. Of course, that's going to skew the numbers quite a bit, and it could be the Ravens were playing a little bit different, trying to defend a large lead. But I mean, you can't really explain so much the other numbers. But I'd like to think that when you have guys as talented as you mentioned, Marlon Humphrey and Kyle Hamilton and Marcus Williams, like those guys are all elitely talented players. So I would imagine that we don't really see a huge drop off for guys like that unless you're seeing injury. And I don't think either of them are dealing with anything major. So I would expect, like, over the course of the season, it'll even out. Maybe they aren't elite, but I think in the end, they'll still be above average.
One thing that's interesting about the Ravens is for the last several years, their go-to player on offense has been Mark Andrews. He is off to a very slow start. He only has 6 catches on the year, 65 yards in total. A big story out of that Chiefs game was how much Isaiah Likely outproduced him. And then since that Chiefs game, neither Likely nor Andrews has really done much. Now, in their defense, in the last 2 games, Derrick Henry has rushed for a combined 235 yards and 3 touchdowns. So when that's going, you don't really need to throw the ball. But I do think the larger point here, unlike the Dolphins, the Jaguars, and the Cardinals, for sure, teams that really are throw heavy offenses that really attack the boundary, where the Bills still are strong despite their losses of Matt Milano, Taron Johnson, Terrell Bernard, who all play inside the boundary, inside the middle of the hashes. This Ravens team is a team that can attack those weaknesses. The teams I mentioned before are top 10 in the NFL at throwing outside the numbers, and the Ravens team are bottom 30. They want to attack you in the middle. When they throw the ball, it is to tight ends and running backs, and they really aren't very secretive about what they want to do when they run the ball. It's maybe the best athlete we've ever seen play the position in Lamar Jackson, and maybe the biggest freak we've ever seen play the position at running back in Derrick Henry. And they're going to try to run it down your throat, or the Bills do have injuries they are trying to overcome. So we've kind of outlined it, Stokes. I do want to talk a little bit about the Bills' strategy offensively, but when the Ravens have the ball, we know the Bills' defense has done very good so far this season at shutting down opposing offenses, overcoming the injuries, and letting Sean McDermott run the D. What do you think about this particular matchup? What is your nervousness level?
I would say the nervousness level is high. Derrick Henry has done some pretty amazing things against the Bills over the course of his career. That Monday night game comes back to mind where he did some crazy things, and he burned us for a long touchdown when you don't really, well, you kind of expect it because he's got that breakaway speed. But anyway, you have when he's going, he can demoralize defense. And then if you start worrying about Derrick Henry, then Lamar Jackson just keeps it. And you think that over the course of the season, like, this run game is going to get more potent as those guys continue to play with one another. And that's what worries me, because Lamar Jackson, there's the gif is legendary of what he did to Matt Milano, like standing right in front of him. He can do that to just about anybody. And when you think about the finesse of Lamar with the power of Derrick Henry, that can shorten a game and keep Josh Allen and the offense off the field, and that's what we do not want.
I would say that if you want optimism from a Bill standpoint, the Cowboys have become kind of a laughingstock when it comes to stopping the run. We saw that firsthand last year when the Bills ran down their throat with James Cook. And then the Raiders are nothing special in that regard either. So I would not just assume that Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson are just guaranteed to get over. I mean, combined, they probably will, but Derrick Henry is just going to go for another 100 yards in this game. I do think that the Bills have a chance, particularly up front, to win that matchup against this Ravens offensive line, which is off to a slower start than we're used to. Let's talk about when the Bills have the ball, Stokes, because for as bad or shaky as the pass defense has been in Baltimore, their run defense is excellent. It's led by Roquan Smith, who, for my money, next to Fred Warner, is the best linebacker in the sport. And he really makes everything on that defense make sense. But they have the big nose tackle, Matabuke. They have two ends and two edge players in Vanoy and Owe, who both rush the passer well, but also, like Greg Rousseau, do a good job of containing the run. I don't think that the Bills are going to be able to line up in traditional run sets and just hand the ball to James Stokes and expect James Stokes. Oh my goodness.
I mean, they can hand it to me. That's fine.
I would not wish that on you. Then hand it to James Cook and get 80 yards this game. I do think the running stats for the Bills are going to have to come with Josh Allen, creativity on pass plays that break down. What do you think about the Bills in this spot? Because in my mind, even though Joe Brady and Josh Allen are getting a lot of credit for leaning on the running game to protect the ball and not force turnovers, this game, much like the Jacksonville one, by the way, screams a matchup where if this team wants to go 4 wide and air it out, or 12 personnel even and air it out and spread the Ravens out, I think that's where the Bills should try to attack this defense.
Yeah, that is absolutely my expectation. I'm obviously not expecting 34 points and a half on the Ravens, but
Hater.
I'm expecting something very, very similar, where they're just going to spread them out, just boom, boom, boom. Whoever's open gets the rock, and that's how they're going to carve them up. That would be my expectation. That would be what I would want them to do. And it seems like Joe Brady is not so bullheaded into say, hey, I need Josh Allen to win this game. He's there. We're going to win the game however the game needs to be won. And I feel like in a situation like this, we may try and run the ball a little bit just to keep them a little bit honest. But overall, I would expect for Josh Allen to throw the ball a lot early and often, and I don't know whether the Ravens are going to be able to defend because they don't really have anyone to key on to say, hey, we have to stop this guy, we have to stop that guy. It's just whoever's open is going to get the ball.
All right, Stokes. Well, the Ravens are 2.5-point favorites. This would be a massive win for the Bills to not only improve to 4-0, but to knock one of the teams that we expect to be in that race for the 1 seed down to 1-3 and also have a game in hand against them. Just cannot say enough what a win would mean for the Bills. In your opinion, it's prediction time. Do the Bills get the win in Baltimore on Sunday night?
So going into this season, I did not know what to expect from this Bills team, and I still don't know what to think of them just because of what they're doing. And even though all the evidence says, hey, the Bills are for real this year, and that's what makes me worry because when I get too confident in them, that's when they put these duds out. However, I am picking the Bills to win this game 24-21. I think it'll be a close game, and I see the Bills continuing to do what they do offensively to be consistent. I don't expect Josh Allen to get too high or too low. He's going to be the same guy he's been so far, and I think the Bills are going to win the game.
All right. Well, that's definitely a positive way to look at it. I'm with you. I've gone back and forth this week. When the schedule came out, I had this down as a loss just because I didn't know what to expect from the Bills. And I obviously had no idea they'd come out looking as good as they have. It's almost like to this point, they don't miss Diggs, they don't miss Davis, and they are hitting the ground running, and the offense as a whole looks better. But I look at this Ravens team, and there's a few factors here. One, the Ravens are significantly healthier than the Bills. The Bills, for as good as Balin Spector has played, for as good as Cam Lewis has played, the Ravens are not missing 2 All-Pros and a team captain like the Bills are right now. The Bills are also coming off of a short week. They played on Monday Night Football. The Ravens have had full rest. The other thing, and this isn't necessarily hard-hitting analysis, but in a can I see this happening, it's just hard for me to envision a world, Stokes, where the Ravens are a 1-3 football team. And that's what I'm really having a hard time wrapping my head around. And so I'm going to predict the Bills lose this game. And I don't necessarily think it's a referendum on them or that, hey, the first 3 games were a fluke or they finally stepped up in weight class. I think this is a battle of 2 good teams. I think one team is certainly, I don't want to say hungrier because we thought that about Jacksonville on Monday. But I do think that the Ravens feel like their backs are up against the wall, and I would expect their best effort on Sunday night. But there are plenty of matchups within this game that I do like for the Bills, and Sean McDermott has faced Lamar Jackson 3 times, not counting Josh Allen's first game as a pro, where he and Lamar Jackson were both backups and then came in the second half because the game was such a blowout. And he's always historically done well against Lamar Jackson, including holding him to 3 points in the playoffs. So I always give Sean McDermott a shot. But I just think, given the circumstance, given the short rest, given where the weaknesses of the Bills defense are and what the Ravens will try to attack, I just think that the Ravens will probably have a little bit too much for the Bills in this matchup in September. I don't think it means the Ravens are a better team. I don't think it means that the Bills are not as good as we thought they were. I think it just means that a good team loses to a good team. It happens all the time. I'm going to take the Ravens in this one, 26-21. And, we'll all be upset, but then pretty quickly we'll get past it because that boy, Stefon Diggs, number 14, coming up next week, Stokes. I wonder if we're going to talk at all about Stefon Diggs and Josh Allen.
I don't think so.
But it is worth mentioning this kicks off a very tough 3-game stretch for the Bills. 3 road games in a row against teams that are all ranked very highly in all AFC power rankings, Ravens, Texans, and Jets. Stokes, if the Bills could find a way to win 2 out of these next 3, I mean, it is smooth sailing to whatever expectation you want for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. If we can get 2 out of these, and seeing what happened to the Texans this past week, I mean, maybe they'll get things figured out. But I'm excited by what I am not seeing from the Jets. I think the Jets. You see Rodgers. He's still accurate. But he's not moving around as well as he used to. And of course, he's 41 years old or whatever. So I mean, it's not really an expectation that he's going to be what he was. But looking at the Jets defense, I was definitely worried going into this season. But I feel that if we can get this one, I'd be fine with a split with these next two. So, getting out of here 2-1, that would be such a boon for going into the sort of second half.
I mean, if we beat Lamar in Baltimore, I am not going to sacrifice any. I'll say take all three, because this is a big hill to climb, and the Bills are certainly capable of it. The Vegas odds makers make this game out to be a pick 'em, just giving the Ravens the 2.5 for home field. He is Stokes, not Cook. Cook plays for the Bills. Stokes plays for Bills Chat. I am Josh McCarty, and we will talk to you next week when we're breaking down Bills and Texans.